Library of Heaven's Path. Chapter 12, Emperor Bloodline. An hour later, Zhang Xuan walked out from the logistics branch and his eyes twinkled in excitement. If it had been his previous self, he would have ended up being taken advantage of today. However, with the Library of Heaven's Path, his life took a complete turn towards another direction. Perhaps, it is a blessing for me to transcend over. This kind of exciting life is what I hope for. Zhang Xuan clenched his fist and exhaled a breath of air. In his previous life, he was only a librarian living a plain and simple life that only rotated around the library and his home. Even if he were to continue on like that, he would only continue claiming his salary and continue with his aimless life. However, things were different here. With a great gift package known as the Library of Heaven's Path, perhaps he would be able to walk further and become stronger. He would be able to live an entirely new and exciting life. At this moment, Zhang Xuan had finally become a part of the world. He no longer struggled in his heart over the dilemma between his homeland and this world. Don't pull me. Let me die, I want to die. Just when he was secretly celebrating, he heard a piercing wail from a distance not too far away. It sounded like a frenzied bull, causing one's heart to tear in agony. Turning around, he saw a fatty howling that he would charge towards the man-made lake in the academy and commit suicide by jumping into it. Behind the fatty, no one tried to stop him. The fatty himself also didn't charge forward despite howling non-stop. Suddenly, he turned around and grabbed the palm of a student beside him and put it on himself, making it seem as though the student is pulling him back. Then, he continued howling. Don't pull me, let me die. I don't want to live anymore. Everyone was speechless. That's too shameless. Zhang Xuan shook his head. This fatty, despite not wanting to die, insisted on portraying a fake image of someone being restrained from committing suicide. He was really shameless. Knowing that this fellow couldn't possibly die, he couldn't be bothered with him anymore. Instead, he walked towards his own classroom. Before he could walk far, the howling voice seemed to close in on him as the ground tremored. Following which, a pair of thick arms hugged his leg. Teacher, I'm begging you, please accept me as your disciple. They all scorn me because of my size and reject me. The fatty burst into tears. Let go. Zhang Xuan was speechless. Wasn't this fellow too eccentric? Rushing over to beg him to accept him as his disciple upon seeing that he was a teacher, Zhang Xuan had never seen such a person in his life. Teacher, I will only let go if you accept me. Tears and snot flowed freely from the multiple facets of the fatty. His voice sounded so sorrowful that even those who were watching from the side started to sympathize with him. Today, I have already visited over 10 teachers, but none of them were willing to accept me. This teacher over here, seeing how pitiful I am, please accept me. The examinations among the students would also affect a teacher's evaluation. A plump person like him would tend to have trouble in his battles and his agility. Most renowned teachers would be unwilling to accept him. If you want me to accept you, you would have to at least show me your abilities. What do you expect to achieve by hugging my leg? Zhang Xuan said. He possessed the Library of Heaven's Path, so he should have no trouble recruiting students. If this person turned out to be mediocre, Zhang Xuan would not accept him as his disciple. Teacher, you have to accept me as your disciple. I am quite capable. The fatty looked up hesitantly before slowly loosening his arms. We have to see before we know whether you are capable or not. There is no use saying so much. Seeing how he was still slightly reluctant to release his grip, Zhang Xuan kicked him away scornfully. What was this? It would be one thing for a female student hugging his leg. However, not only was he a male, he was also a fatty. He shivered just by the thought of it. Fine. Look at my abilities. The fatty didn't feel scorned. He stood up and surveyed the surroundings. Then, he carried a few concrete blocks over from a short distance away. After which, lifting one up with his hands, he smashed his head into it. Peng! The concrete block shattered. After which, he carried a few more concrete block and shattered it using his elbow and leg. Without an exception, they all shattered. This fellow may seem plump, but he is skilled in Honglian martial arts. Ignoring his Honglian, Zhang Xuan was currently looking through the book that was automatically compiled in his mind. The skills trained through Honglian could also be considered as a type of martial arts. The moment the fatty displayed his prowess, the library began to compile his information. Yuan Tao, a wandering cultivator in Daihuang City, Fighter 1 Danjuxi Realm Intermediate. Flaws, 18 aspects. Number 1, the ancient emperor bloodline in his body has yet to be awakened. Number 2, his foundations are too weak, the martial arts he trains in. Emperor bloodline? Looking at the records on the book, Zhang Xuan was taken aback. After merging with the memories of the previous owner of the body, he knew that in this world, bloodline and one's innate body was very important. As long as one possessed either one of the two along with a suitable method to utilize it, their cultivation would soar by leaps and bounds in the future, causing their strength to increase exponentially. There were many types of innate bodies such as pure yin body, pure yang body, immaculate body, golden body. There were also many types of bloodlines such as ancient bloodlines, new bloodlines, inheritances, and mutations. Once found, every single one of them would become a target competed over by countless teachers. The emperor bloodline which the fatty possessed was one of the ancient bloodlines. It was said that when those who possessed such bloodline reached the peak of their cultivation, their body would be impenetrable, no objects in the world would be able to break through their defenses. It was one of the most powerful bloodlines among defense-based bloodlines. This inconspicuous, fat, and shameless fellow actually possessed an ancient bloodline? His ancient bloodline has yet to be awakened. From the looks of it, this fellow doesn't seem to be aware of it as well. A glint flashed through Zhang Xuan's eyes. Of all types of bloodlines, ancient bloodlines were quite powerful. For this fellow to not be accepted after visiting a dozen of teachers, it didn't mean that they were unable to recognize such a bloodline. Rather, his bloodline had yet to be awakened, causing him to be just like any other normal people. Not mentioning how other people weren't able to discern his bloodline, probably even he himself didn't know about it. However, even if he didn't know, he did have the potential in this aspect. His defensive abilities were much stronger than the others, and that's the reason why he chose to train in this kind of punchbag martial arts. I must accept this fellow under my tutelage. His eyes twinkled. The entire academy might not even witness a single student possessing ancient bloodline throughout a course of multiple years. For such a good bud to appear before him, how could he possibly allow him to escape? Not bad. I will accept you as my student. Come, acknowledge me as your teacher. Zhang Xuan suppressed the jubilation in his heart and threw an identity token over to him with a calm face. Teacher, are you really going to accept me? This is great. The fatty seemed to have taken quite a few mental blows throughout the day. Upon hearing that a teacher was willing to accept him, he was so excited that he cut his finger without second thoughts and squeezed a blood droplet on it. It seems that the standard of the teacher determines the standard of the students he would accept. When the teacher is trash, the student would also be trash. At this moment, a cold scorn sounded out. Turning around, Zhang Xuan saw a cold and arrogant young man walking over. There was a beautiful lady walking beside the young man. Her pitch-black silky hair flowed down her shoulders, her pale skin had a creamy texture to it, and her eyes captivated the gaze of those looking into it. Shang Bin? Shen Bai, are you? Upon seeing the two of them, two names immediately floated into his head. In the entire academy, there were probably no one who would be unaware of Shen Bai, are you? She didn't have any unique background, but she was publicly acknowledged as a beautiful teacher. Even the school bell would pale in comparison when compared to her. It wouldn't have meant anything if she was all looks. The crux of it was that she is skilled in teaching as well. Despite being in this academy for less than a year, she had already become one of the most famous teachers in the academy. Noble, elegant, beautiful, and intelligent, she attracted the frenzied pursuit of quite a few teachers. Zhang Xuan's previous self was also one of her pursuers. However, the previous Zhang Xuan was too much of a failure. Not mentioning his weak cultivation, he was also the last in all kinds of examinations. Due to his low self-esteem, even though he was interested in her, he had never talked to the goddess of his heart, needless to say, courted her. This young man was called Shangbin and he was the grandson of the academy's elder Shang. He was also one of her pursuers and he had used his identity to suppress the other pursuers. He seemed to have received word from some source that Zhang Xuan was also interested in Shen Bairu, prompting him to insult him whenever they meet, sometimes even resorting to physical violence. However, Shen Bairu didn't seem to be interested in him. All along, she had been cold to everyone, as though she wasn't interested in anyone else, leaving Shangbin distressed and helpless. "Who are you insulting as trash?" Hearing Shangbin's unrestrained sarcasm, Zhang Xuan didn't get angry and turned around to look over. "Trash is insulting to you?" Shangbin smiled contemptuously. "Oh, so trash is insulting to me. So smelly, so smelly." Zhang Xuan waved his hand in front of his nose, putting on a disgusted expression. "You," only now did Shangbin react. Being made fun of by the worst teacher in the academy, his face turned red. Emperor bloodline is, Longzi bloodline. In ancient China, they believe in looking at one's facial features to determine one's future. Naturally, there's a face for one destined for nobility as well. One of these noble faces is this Longzi face, which is usually termed as the face of an emperor. This fellow may seem plump, but he is skilled in Honglian martial arts. Translator: Honglian is a way of training and literally means training through brute strength. There are three main ways of training in martial arts: Wenlian, Wulian, and Honglian. According to Baidu, the three different way of training will lead the martial artists to different peaks. Honglian refers to a method which uses smashing of one's body onto a hard object in order to train their body parts. Even today, Honglian is still used as a way of training by a few, like the iron head skills. They smash their head on solid objects from young.